You've studied for months. You know the grammar. You've memorized hundreds of words. But the moment a native speaker talks to you, your mind goes completely blank. Sound familiar? Here's the strange part, that freeze isn't a sign that you're bad at languages. It's actually your brain doing exactly what it was built to do. And once you understand why it happens, you can stop fighting your brain, and start working with it. So what's really going on inside your head when you learn a new language? Why does something feel impossible one day, and then suddenly just click the next? The answer comes down to how your brain builds new connections, and it's more surprising than most people think. Let us start at the very beginning. Think of your brain like a city. A huge, busy, incredibly complex city with billions of roads connecting every part of it. These roads are called neural pathways. Every time you learn something new, your brain builds a new road. When you were a baby learning your first language, your brain was building roads at an extraordinary speed. Thousands of new connections every single second. That is why children pick up language so naturally. Their city is under constant construction. But here is what surprises most people. When you stop using a road, the brain actually removes it. This process is called synaptic pruning. Your brain is not just a builder. It is also a demolition crew. It clears away roads that are not being used to make space and energy for the ones that are. This is why you might have forgotten words from a language you studied years ago. The roads were not used, so the brain quietly removed them. It is not a failure of memory. It is your brain being efficient. Now, when you start learning a second language as an adult, something remarkable begins. Your brain starts building a new set of roads alongside the ones that already exist for your native language. At first, these new roads are narrow and rough. Traffic moves slowly. You have to think hard about every word, every grammar rule, every sound. Think of it like learning to drive on the opposite side of the road. Every instinct you have pulls you in the wrong direction. Your brain keeps reaching for the familiar roads, your first language, because those roads are wide, smooth, and fast. This is why translation happens automatically in the early stages of language learning. Your brain does not yet have a direct road to the new language. It takes a detour through your native language first. You hear an English word, your brain translates it into your language, you understand it, then you translate your response back into English. That is a very long journey for every single sentence. But with practice, something changes. The new roads get wider. They get smoother. The brain starts to recognize patterns. And slowly, a direct connection begins to form between meaning and the new language, without the detour. Scientists call this automaticity. It is the point where a skill becomes so practiced that it no longer requires conscious effort. Think of how you do not think about balancing when you walk. You just walk. Language fluency works the same way. The goal is to make English automatic. Now let us talk about something called the critical period. For many years, scientists believed that there was a strict window of time, roughly from birth to around age 12, during which the brain was perfectly designed for language learning. After that window closed, they believed, it became significantly harder. This idea made a lot of people feel discouraged. If you are an adult learner, you may have heard someone say, "Oh, it is much harder to learn a language when you are older." And that can feel quite defeating. But here is what almost no one talks about. Recent neuroscience research has revealed something that completely challenges this old idea. Adults are not worse at language learning. They are different at it. And in some very important ways, they are actually better. A major study published by researchers at MIT in 2018 analyzed data from nearly 670,000 people learning English. They found that adults actually learn grammar rules faster than children in the early stages. Adults have stronger analytical skills. They can recognize patterns more quickly. They can use logic to understand structure. Children have one enormous advantage: time and immersion. They are surrounded by language all day, every day, with no pressure and no embarrassment. But the brain itself? It does not simply shut down for language learning after childhood. It remains capable of building those new roads at any age. This brings us to one of the most exciting discoveries in modern neuroscience. It is called neuroplasticity. And it is the scientific proof that your brain can change, grow, and rewire itself throughout your entire life. Neuroplasticity means that every time you practice English, every time you listen, speak, read, or write, you are physically changing the structure of your brain. You are making certain connections stronger. You are building new pathways. You are literally reshaping the organ inside your skull. Brain scans of bilingual people, people who speak two languages fluently, show clear physical differences compared to people who speak only one language. The area of the brain called the left inferior frontal gyrus, which is heavily involved in language processing, is actually denser in bilingual people. It has more connections. It is more developed. Learning a second language is, in a very real sense, a workout for your brain. And like any workout, the results depend on consistency and effort. Now let us talk about something that many language learners experience but rarely understand: the emotional side of language learning. And this is where the science gets truly fascinating. Your brain does not process language in isolation. Language is deeply connected to emotion, memory, and identity. When you speak your native language, you are not just using words. You are using a system that is woven into your earliest memories, your relationships, your sense of self. When you speak a second language, something interesting happens. Research shows that people often feel slightly less emotional when using their second language. They feel a kind of distance from the words. This can actually be useful. Studies have found that people make more rational, logical decisions when thinking in a second language, because the emotional weight of the words is reduced. But it also means that in the early stages, speaking a new language can feel strange and even uncomfortable. You might feel like you are not fully yourself. Like you are performing rather than communicating. This is completely normal. It is your brain adjusting to a new identity layer. Many fluent bilingual speakers describe having a slightly different personality in each language. More formal in one, more relaxed in another. More humorous, more serious, more confident. This is not imagination. It is a real neurological and psychological phenomenon. Language shapes how we think, and different languages activate different patterns of thought. So what does all of this mean for how you should actually learn English? The science gives us some very clear answers. First, repetition matters more than you think. Every time you encounter a word or a structure, your brain strengthens that neural pathway. The first time you see a word, the road is barely a dirt track. The 10th time, it is a proper road. The 50th time, it is a highway. This is why vocabulary revision and repeated exposure are so powerful. Second, emotion accelerates learning. Your brain is wired to remember things that carry emotional weight. This is why you remember the first English song that made you feel something, or the first movie that made you laugh in English. Emotional experiences create stronger neural connections. So seek out English content that genuinely interests or moves you. Do not just study. Feel. Third, sleep is not optional. During sleep, your brain consolidates everything you learned during the day. It takes the new roads you started building and reinforces them. Studies show that people who sleep well after a learning session retain significantly more than those who do not. Sleep is not rest from learning. Sleep is part of learning. Fourth, making mistakes is neurologically necessary. When you make an error and then receive correction, your brain pays intense attention. It flags the moment as important. The surprise of being wrong actually triggers a stronger memory response than simply getting something right. So do not fear mistakes. Your brain is learning from them more deeply than you realize. And fifth, perhaps the most important of all, consistency beats intensity. 30 minutes of English every single day will build stronger, more permanent neural pathways than 4 hours once a week. Your brain needs regular, repeated activation of those new roads to keep them open and growing. Let us come back to that wow factor I promised you at the beginning. Here it is. Are you ready? Research has shown that learning a second language can delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease and dementia by an average of 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years. Simply by being bilingual, your brain builds what scientists call cognitive reserve, a kind of extra mental strength that helps it resist the damage caused by these diseases. Bilingual people's brains show the physical symptoms of Alzheimer's disease at the same rate as monolingual people. But they do not show the behavioral symptoms, the memory loss, the confusion, until much later. The brain has built enough alternative pathways that it can compensate for the damage for longer. You are not just learning a language. You are building a stronger, more resilient brain. Every English lesson you take is an investment in your long-term mental health. So why does all of this matter for your everyday life? Because understanding how your brain learns changes how you approach learning itself. When you know that repetition builds highways in your brain, you stop feeling frustrated by revision and start seeing it as construction work. When you know that sleep consolidates memory, you stop feeling guilty about resting and start protecting your sleep as part of your study routine. When you know that mistakes trigger stronger learning, you stop being afraid to speak and start seeing every error as a gift. And when you know that your brain remains plastic and changeable at any age, you stop believing the story that it is too late for you. It is not too late. The roads can always be built. The city is never finished. Your brain right now, as you listen to this video in English, is changing. New connections are forming. Old pathways are being reinforced. You are, at this very moment, rewiring yourself. That is not a metaphor. That is neuroscience. And that is something worth remembering the next time learning feels difficult. Difficulty is not a sign that something is wrong. Difficulty is the sound of your brain building new roads.